Hi, I'm Lydia Bennett, a woman who once thought love was enough. I believed in trust, in partnership, in the promises made at candlelit dinners and whispered late at night. But when the man I loved showed me a contract designed to erase me, I realized I had to show him who I really was, and what I already had. The air in the restaurant was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and roasted duck. Laughter bounced off the high ceilings. It was our engagement party, a room full of people who were supposed to love us. Daniel stood beside me, his arm wrapped tightly around my waist. He felt like home. Or he did, until he let go of me, reached into his jacket pocket, and pulled out a thick stack of papers bound by a clip. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me, where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing how far this story travels. He held it out to me. In front of my parents, his parents, and all our closest friends, he smirked. It wasn't his usual charming smile. This one was sharp and cold. "If you really love me," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "you'll sign the prenup." A wave of murmurs washed over the room. My mother's smile froze on her face. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Daniel's mother, a woman who dripped with diamonds and disdain, leaned forward and added, "It's just protection, dear. Our family has wealth to consider." I looked down at the document in my hands. The paper felt heavy like a tombstone. My hands began to tremble. Daniel and his family probably thought it was fear. They thought they had me trapped, a little bird in a golden cage. But they were wrong. The trembling wasn't from fear. It was from the quiet, furious knowledge that they had underestimated me completely. It hadn't always been like this. When I first met Daniel, he swept me off my feet. He was everything I thought I wanted. He was handsome, confident, and worked in high-stakes finance, a world that seemed so different from my quiet life as a graphic designer. He took me on romantic trips to Napa Valley, where we drank expensive wine and talked about our future under the stars. We took long walks through Central Park in the fall, the crisp leaves crunching under our feet as he promised to build a life with me. "You won't have to worry about a thing, Lydia," he would whisper, kissing my forehead. "I'll take care of everything." And I believed him. I was so in love, so caught up in the dream he was selling me, that I started letting my own life shrink. I was on the partner track at my design firm, a goal I had worked toward for years, but I started saying no to late nights at the office so I could be home to have dinner with him. I passed on a major promotion that would have required more travel. I even drifted away from some of my oldest friends because Daniel found them unambitious. I was pouring all of myself into our relationship, believing it was an investment in our shared future. He was my world, and I thought I was his. But looking back now, the red flags were there. They were small at first, easy to ignore. They were disguised as jokes. We'd be at a dinner with his colleagues, and I'd be talking about a project I was passionate about. Daniel would laugh and wrap his arm around me. "Her design job is cute, isn't it?" he'd say to the table. "But it's nothing compared to real finance." The table would chuckle, and I'd force a smile, feeling a familiar sting of embarrassment. I told myself he was just proud of his own career. His family was less subtle. They never missed a chance to remind me where I came from. His mother would look at my clothes and say, "That's a lovely dress, dear. Is it from one of those department stores?" His father would talk about their family's legacy, their properties, their investments, and then look at me with a dismissive air. "You're marrying up, you know," his sister once told me at a family brunch, her voice a low sneer. "You should be grateful." Each comment was a small cut. I would go home and cry sometimes, but when I tried to talk to Daniel about it, he would brush it off. "That's just how they are," he'd say. "They're protective. Don't take it so personally." So I buried my discomfort. I convinced myself that love was more important than money or status. I told myself that once we were married, I would be one of them, and their little digs would stop. I loved him, and I thought that was enough to overcome anything. I was wrong. That engagement party was the moment the illusion shattered. The prenup he handed me wasn't just a legal document, it was a declaration of war. It was a trap. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I finally read it. My hands were steady now, my heart cold and clear. The terms were more insulting than I could have imagined. It stripped me of any rights to any asset acquired during our marriage. even if my own efforts contributed to it. It stated that in the event of a divorce, I would walk away with nothing but what I came in with. It went even further, restricting me from claiming any kind of spousal support, no matter the circumstances. It was designed to ensure that if things went wrong, I would be left completely destitute, erased from his life as if I had never been there. They all expected me to break. They expected me to cry, to argue, and then, ultimately, to sign it just to prove my devotion and keep my seat at their table. They thought my love for Daniel would make me accept any humiliation. They saw me as weak, dependent, and desperate. Instead of reacting, I just smiled. It was a small, quiet smile, just for myself. I took the papers, put them in my bag, and went home. As I reread the cruel clinical language, I didn't feel despair. I felt a strange sense of calm. I thought about my own past, the one they knew nothing about. What they didn't know was that while I was working my cute design job, I was also building something else in secret. For 5 years, I had poured every spare hour, late nights, early mornings, weekends, into developing an online organizational platform. It was a simple idea, born from my own frustrations, but it solved a problem people had. I nurtured it, grew it, and 2 years ago, I sold it to a major tech company. The sale wasn't announced in the headlines. It was a quiet acquisition. I never told Daniel, not because I was hiding it, but because it was mine. It was my achievement, my safety net, something that belonged only to me. After the sale, I didn't buy a fancy car or a new wardrobe. I hired the best financial advisors I could find. I quietly invested my earnings into a diverse portfolio of stocks, real estate, and promising tech startups. While Daniel and his family were looking down on me, my wealth was growing silently in the background. My portfolio was now worth nearly $69 million. I remembered all the times I had sat at their dinner table, feeling small. I replayed the memories in my head, but this time, they didn't hurt. They felt different. I remembered a Christmas dinner where Daniel's father had patted my hand condescendingly. "You're a very lucky girl, Lydia," he'd said, his voice booming across the table. "My son is a great catch. He could have had anyone, but he chose you." The implication was clear. I was nothing, and I owed them everything. I had just smiled politely and said, "I'm very lucky to have him." Inside, I was thinking about the 7-figure real estate deal I had closed that morning. I remembered Daniel's sister, Charlotte, cornering me in the kitchen at a summer barbecue. "I just want you to know," she'd sneered, "don't expect us to treat you as an equal. We protect what's ours." I had just nodded, my mind on a call I'd had with my investment manager about a new tech IPO. I had smiled through all their humiliation, all their little power plays, all while silently knowing that I stood on stronger financial ground than all of them combined. Their wealth was old, inherited, and something they used as a weapon. Mine was new, earned, and something I used as a shield. A week after the engagement party, the pressure started. Daniel called me every day. "Have you had a chance to look at the papers, honey? My parents are asking." His tone was light, but there was an edge to it. The final push came at the following Sunday dinner at his parents' estate. The meal was tense. No one mentioned the prenup, but it was the only thing anyone was thinking about. As dessert was served, Daniel's father cleared his throat. "Lydia," he said, his voice formal, "we need to discuss this document. We can't move forward with the wedding plans until this is official. Have you signed it yet?" All eyes turned to me. Daniel looked at me, a pleading look in his eyes that was mixed with an unmistakable command. His mother sat perfectly still, her expression like stone. They had me cornered. This was the moment of my surrender. I calmly placed my napkin on the table. I reached into my tote bag, which I had placed beside my chair. But I didn't pull out their prenup. I pulled out my own binder. It was sleek and black, professionally bound. I opened it and laid it on the table. Inside were the audited statements of my portfolio, my assets, my companies, all independently valued. The final summary page was on top, the number printed in bold, clear type. $69,000. I slid the binder across the polished mahogany table toward Daniel's father. I spoke softly, my voice perfectly steady. "You wanted protection," I said, looking each one of them in the eye. "I already have mine." Daniel's face drained of all color. He looked from the binder to me, his mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. He looked like he had seen a ghost. His mother was the first to speak, her voice a sputtering whisper. Why didn't you tell us?" His father stammered, shaking his head. "This can't be real. Where did you get this?" I leaned back in my chair, unshaken. For the first time at this table, I felt completely at peace. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had been completely annihilated. The trap they had so carefully set for me had backfired spectacularly. They wanted a dependent, a pretty accessory who would be grateful for their scraps. They couldn't comprehend that the woman they saw as nothing was, in fact, untouchable. And their prenup? It was completely irrelevant. My wealth was premarital, separate, and already protected far more securely than their lawyers could ever manage. I could have screamed. I could have listed every insult, every condescending remark, every moment they made me feel worthless. I could have thrown their hypocrisy in their faces. But I didn't need to. I chose silence over rage. My power wasn't in yelling, it was in the quiet truth laid out on their dinner table. I stood up. I took their unsigned prenup from my bag and placed it gently on top of my portfolio. "Thank you for dinner," I said. Then I turned, walked out of the dining room, out of their house, and out of their lives. I never looked back. In the weeks that followed, Daniel sent a flood of desperate texts and voicemails. They were a mix of apologies, confusion, and accusations. "How could you not tell me?" one message said. "We could have been a real power couple," another one pleaded. He didn't get it. He never would. He wasn't in love with me. He was in love with the idea of a woman he could control. I never replied. I poured my energy into things that mattered. I started a charitable foundation to help young women from underprivileged backgrounds start their own businesses. I traveled, not to escape, but to explore. I rebuilt my joy piece by piece on a foundation that no one could ever take away from me. And that's how I learned that real love doesn't come with conditions or contracts designed to erase you. True partnership is about building each other up, not protecting yourself from the person you claim to love. If you've ever been underestimated or told you're less than, remember this: your worth is not determined by their opinion, and sometimes the greatest power speaks loudest in silence. If this story hit home, please like, subscribe, and share. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes?